Hello everyone, my name is Sini Issac and I'm currently a third year student from NMIMS Hyderabad. The topic which we are going to cover in today's video is wrongful restraint and wrongful confinement. So let's get started. Wrongful restraint and wrongful confinement are offences related to human body. Committing these two offences would mean that it is violative of the right of the person given in Article 19 and 21 of the Indian Constitution. Both the offence of wrongful restraint and wrongful confinement may appear to be the same but are not. A proper understanding of these two offences become a lot more necessary because the punishment of wrongful confinement is much higher, comparatively higher than wrongful restraint. So let's get first started to study in detail about wrongful restraint. Restraint means the action of keeping someone or something under control and restricting someone's personal liberty or freedom of movement. Wrongful restraint is defined in section 339 of IPC. It states that whoever on purpose obstructs any person with the intent of prevent him from moving in direction in which he or she has a right to move or proceed is said to be wrongfully restrain that person. In a more simpler language, it means intentionally blocking someone's right to move from one place to another. It is important to note that restraining someone's right physically is not the only factor which constitute restraint. Threat to restrain someone's right of way to proceed will also constitute wrongful restrainment. Wrongful restraint is partial restraint because only a particular direction is restricted and not the whole direction of a person is restrictive. So, what are the exceptions of wrongful restraint? It is not an offense under this section when a person in good faith believes himself to have a lawful right to prevent another person's private way or land or water. So this is an exception. Now let us go and study the punishment of wrongful restraint. Punishment for wrongful restraint is defined under section 341 of IPC as whoever wrongfully restrains someone's right will be sentenced to either simple imprisonment which may extend to 1 year, a fine which may extend to 500 or with both. So, what are the ingredients of wrongful restraint? So, the first ingredient is purposefully or voluntarily obstructing a person. Second is to prevent him move in a direction. Third is where the person has a right to move or proceed. And fourth is the obstruction was in a bad faith. So, what are the objective of section 339? The object is to protect the right of a person who moves freely wherever he wants and also to protect life and his personal liberty. The obstruction of person's right in a bad faith is offensive and punishable under the section. As soon as the freedom or right of a person to proceed in a way is obstructed, wrongful restraint takes place. So now let us get into the examples of wrongful restraint. First example, A intentionally builds a wall across a path in a bad faith where he knows that Z has the right to pass. As a result, Z is prevented from passing the path. Here A is wrongfully restrained Z's right to proceed. Second example is that Mr. P has a right to proceed in a path where he is threatened by M to proceed. If he proceeds, M will place a wild dog in P's path. By doing this, M has wrongfully restrained P's path. If P pretends that the dog is furious when he actually is not and thus obstructs M path, it will constitute wrongful restrainment. So now let us get into wrongful confinement. Confinement means the action of restraining or restricting someone in a place or within the boundaries. Wrongful confinement is defined in section 340 of IPC. It states that whoever wrongfully restrains a person so as to prevent that the person to move beyond a certain restricted limit is said to have committed the offense of wrongful confinement. In a simpler language, it means that restricting a person's right to move within the restricted limit which he has the right to move. Wrongful confinement is full restraint because a person is restricted within a defined space or area. So what are the punishment of wrongful confinement? Punishment for wrongful confinement is defined under section 342 of IPC as whoever confines any person shall be sentenced to imprisonment which may either extend to 1 year or fine which may extend to ₹1,000 or with both. So what are the ingredients of wrongful confinement are that without a lawful jurisdiction justifying restraining a person's right to proceed wrongfully and completely. Second is such a restriction should prevent a person's right to move beyond a defined limit. So now what are the examples of confinement? A defied D to move into a walled space. The moment D entered, A locks up the door in a bad faith in order to confine him. Here A has committed an offense of wrongful confinement, T within a defined wall. This is because he cannot move anywhere else beyond that particular place. Second example is D in a bad faith and with the intention to confine Z places a few men with firearms out of the building where Z resides. Here he threatens him that if he attempts to move out of the building then the men will fire. Here D has committed an offense of wrongful confinement. Now there are few important points which are to be remembered in wrongful confinement. That is, without any desire to proceed or to move, there cannot be any wrongful confinement in a case. Second is, if there is a consent by the person for confinement, it cannot be said as wrongful confinement. Third is, if there is a consent or a proof of actual physical obstruction is not essential in wrongful confinement. Fourth, in this session, the period of confinement is immaterial. The period of confinement only becomes material while giving punishment as at that time it may vary. So, there are various aggregated forms of wrongful confinements mentioned in IPC. Some of them are section 343 where wrongful confinement for 3 or more days, section 334 wrongful confinement for 10 or more days, wrongful confinement for a person whose liberalizational writ has been issued is mentioned in section 345, section 346 wrongful confinement in secret, section 334 wrongful confinement to extract property or restraint to illegal act, section 348 wrongful confinement to extort confession or comply restoration of property. So now let us see the difference between wrongful restraint and wrongful confinement. So the conclusion of the above said theory could be as a comprehensive analysis of these two offences is that wrongful restraint is preventive a person to move in a direction. It does not mean or include all the direction. It means only a particular direction. For example, you are walking on a street and someone blocks your way to proceed in the direction you wanted to go. Here you have the option to move in any other direction apart from the restricted one. Wrongful confinement is blocking all the way of a person where he has the right to go. The objective of these offences is to protect personal liberty and their right to move freely throughout the territory of India. But if anyone in any good faith or with lawful justification obstructs a path, that will not fall under this offence. So I hope that today's video helped you to understand the difference between wrongful confinement and wrongful restraint. Thank you.